In this week's EV news, electric cars are not zero emission, says the advertising watchdog. DS are to launch a high-riding electric luxury saloon. France halts its €100 EV lease scheme after huge demand. And Bristol is to get 187 new EV charging points. Welcome back to another EV news, where I bring you a selection of EV-related news stories from the UK and beyond. Did you know that 75% of people that watch videos on this channel are not subscribed? If that's you, make sure you click the subscribe button today. It's free, means you won't miss out on future videos, and it helps the channel grow. Still a little bit out of sync on the upload schedule, but this third video should bring us back in line to go back to having weekly news videos. If you're wondering why there's a sudden rush of these, that is the reason. But let's get into the news, shall we? First up, the Advertising Standards Authority, the UK's advertising watchdog, demonstrates that it is beyond useless by ruling that BMW and MG adverts claiming that their electric cars are zero emission are misleading and shouldn't appear again. BMW ran a paid-for Google ad last August featuring the claim "Zero emissions cars, download your brochure today," while MG made a zero emissions claim on a Google ad for its electric cars around the same time. The Advertising Standards Authority challenged both adverts for a misleading representation of the vehicle's environmental impact. Both ads appeared on Google search and claimed their electric vehicles had zero emissions, said ASA spokesman Toby King. While we accepted this was true when driving, we determined this was misleading as they still produced emissions when manufactured or, depending on the electrical source, when charging. We've therefore banned these ads and told BMW and MG to ensure they don't make similar claims without robust evidence in future. What an absolute load of nonsense. Anyone with half a brain knows that any claim about zero emissions refers to zero tailpipe emissions. If we're going to start considering emissions from manufacturing and fuel production, well, internal combustion cars are in for a little bit of a shock, aren't they? Cars that are taxed, for example, based on emissions would find themselves soaring into the highest possible tax bracket if we included emissions from the discovery, extraction, refinement, transportation of petrol and diesel. Make no mistake about that whatsoever. Let me know your opinion on this in the comments, but to me, it just demonstrates that the ASA are completely unfit for purpose. They have let firms like Toyota run adverts about self-charging hybrids. Oh, look how great our self-charging hybrids are. Well, they're self-charging because they're 100% petrol powered. The battery is only ever charged by running the petrol engine. So you can't claim there's any environmental benefit of that either. But they'll ban stuff like this, claiming that you need to think about the overall life cycle because you can't say it's zero emissions otherwise. I mean, does anybody think that we can possibly make anything with absolutely zero emissions? The whole point is meant to be a reduction of emissions, no? And like I say, if we started applying whole life cycle emissions to everything, that would make for a very, very interesting picture, I think. And as studies have proved time and time and time again, if you lumped all that onto the process for supplying fuel for combustion cars, their lifetime emissions would be massively higher than an electric vehicle. It's nonsense, and like I say, it demonstrates to me that the ASA are no use whatsoever. But I would welcome your thoughts. Next up, DS are preparing to launch a flagship new electric car to begin a new era of it only selling plug-in hybrids and EVs. If you need a refresher, DS is the quirky sort of luxury spin-off from Citroën that we probably don't talk about enough, really. Spotted winter testing ahead of its launch in early 2025, the DS9 replacement wears a high-riding fastback body similar to fellow Stellantis brand Peugeot's new E3008 crossover. It's expected to be the first of two new DS models entering production at Stellantis' factory in Melfi, Italy in 2025, and will be twinned with the successor to the Vauxhall Insignia. All models being produced at Melfi will use the STLA Medium platform, which made its debut under the E3008. This provides a strong hint at the specifications for the new DS EV. The platform is for cars between 4.3 and 4.9 metres long, meaning it could underpin the replacements for every model in the current DS lineup, apart from the DS3, which would be on the STLA Small architecture. STLA Medium allows for EV power outputs between 215 and 382 brake horsepower, utilising either a single motor mounted at the front or a motor on each axle, providing four-wheel drive. Currently, it offers battery capacities of up to 98 kilowatt hours, yielding up to 435 miles of range. The E3008 offers a 73 kilowatt hour usable pack, which delivers 326 miles between charges. Now that you're reminded that DS actually exist and are trying to be a premium brand, what do you think about the prospect of a medium-sized saloon like this joining their lineup? Is there a real future for a luxury Stellantis brand, or should they stick to the volume stuff like the Citroën EC3 and stuff like that, which have an appeal because they're cheap, like, well, quite a lot of French cars have in the past, right? I'm not sure if there's really room in the market for this sort of luxury brand, but I quite like the idea of it, so I'll be keeping an eye out for more details coming up as time goes on. Used bargain of the week time now, where I show you something from Auto Trader that has caught my eye, usually because it's heavily discounted from its price new. How about the first all-electric DS model, the DS3 E-Tense Crossback, for 13 grand. One for 12,990, but it has 49,000 miles on the clock. I would probably spend the extra 300 quid on this one from Power Lease, which seem to feature quite a lot in this section. £13,289 get you the 16,500 mile example. Now, I've got no affiliation with Power Lease and I've got no idea if they're any good at what they do, but they do seem to feature in these videos quite a lot because they seem to sell some of the cheapest used EVs in the UK. And price really is the key driver when we're talking about the used bargain of the week. It's a funky looking thing, the DS3, and it's basically the usual 50 kilowatt hour Stellantis drivetrain in a different body. I'm sure you'll probably be better off with an EC4 or an E2008, but those weren't mentioned in the earlier news story, so the DS3 it is. I don't know that much about these if I'm honest. If you've driven one, or even better if you own one, get yourself into the comments, tell us all why you should or shouldn't buy one. But at 13 grand, they look like decent value to me. The French government has suspended an electric car leasing scheme after only 6 weeks, following a surge in demand that more than doubled the vehicles required. Officials said that the scheme that was launched in December to help low-income households and cut carbon emissions would be relaunched next year. Originally, 25,000 European-built electric cars were to be offered on lease from €100 per month, but this was doubled after massive demand. The government said it had more than 90,000 applications by the end of January. It's a real success story and symbolic of French environmental policy. It is good for the wallet and good for the planet, an advisor to President Macron said. Applicants had to be over 18, live in France, live at least 15 kilometres, 9 miles, away from their place of work, and drive more than 8,000 kilometres per year as part of their professional activity, and have a household taxable income of less than €15,400 per person. The 3-year leasing contract can be renewed once with the option to buy the vehicle, which must have been manufactured in France or elsewhere in Europe. The government is subsidising each vehicle up to a maximum total of €13,000. I mean, just imagine a subsidy scheme being paused because the demand is too high. A scheme that not only helps people get into EVs, but encourages car makers to keep production in that country, or at least in Europe. I just couldn't imagine such a thing here in the UK. I'm sure somebody will come crying in the comments about how that's such a terrible idea and it would never work and we shouldn't do it. But, I mean, it sounds amazing, doesn't it? The Industry and Energy Minister suggested that the popular offer had been constrained by the number of electric vehicles being made in France and urged the car makers to speed up production. It's just remarkable. Could you imagine if UK car industry was seeing so much demand they couldn't actually keep up with production? It'll never happen though, will it? Charging infrastructure news now to round off this week's video, and I know how much you love me whittering on about how a council here or there are installing X number of chargers in a city you'll probably never bother visiting. Bristol City Council get that dubious honour this week as they announced that 187 chargers will be installed as part of a rollout across the southwest that will see 300 in total. It's expected to cost around £4.9 million and be completed by March 2026. In Bristol, those plans include 11 community charging points, 26 charging points in places like train stations, shopping centres, cinemas or hotels, and 150 on-street residential charging points either fitted to lampposts or on the pavement where it's wide enough. Councillor Dawn Alexander, the Cabinet Minister for Transport, added, "Electric vehicles will be part of the solution, but we recognise there are also some downsides in an urban context. We are supporting this, but we are very mindful of the needs of people with disabilities and the need to keep footways clear for people who are not able to work their way around obstructions. I've seen one or two examples on social media where charging points have gone in a way that has not recognised the needs of people in wheelchairs. That won't be happening here," he says. I think this is the first time I've ever seen one of these announcements from councils actually specifically mention and address accessibility. Councillor Alexander is absolutely right that there have been too many substandard installations over the years. There's no information just yet on who is going to provide or look after these chargers. I'm assuming from the mention of cost that they aren't going down the Ubitricity Shell route, where those are solely funded by both central government grants and then topped up with money from Shell, who are clearly trying to get a strong foothold in this residential charging market. I wonder if I need to compile a list of all these stories that I'm bringing to you about charger installs, and then we can go back and revisit them, see what we're actually being left with once they've been delivered versus what was promised when they talked about the media about it. That could well be very interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments. Should I try to focus on the actual results of these big schemes that the local authorities are promising us? I think that could be quite interesting indeed. But that's all for this week's EV News. Let me know in the comments what you think about any or all of these stories. As always, make sure you subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss out on the next video. And if you've enjoyed this video, do make sure you click the like button. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.